They paid me to flood their own golf course. That's the beautiful, stupid truth of it. Buxter Winstrap III wrote me a check for 32 hours of manual labor, and I used every minute to build the pipe that would drown his putting green, expose his illegal dam, and make every farmer in the county watch him cry on YouTube. You want to hear how? Sit down. And keep your drink handy, because this story's got more twists than a rattlesnake on a hot skillet. It started the day he killed my horse. I was fixing a fence when the bulldozer roared up. Buxter was at the wheel, his two idiot sons riding the fenders like monkeys on a garbage truck. My old mare Diablo was in the corral, too weak from no water to even lift her head. She hadn't had a decent drink in 4 days because Buxter had reallocated the stock water to his decorative fountain. A fountain shaped like a naked angel. I wish I was making that up. Old man. Buxter yelled. Your nag's on my property. She's in a corral you don't use, I said. I'm gonna use it now. He grinned. As a grave. Big Bubba was already filming with his phone. This is going on the internet. Redneck vs. Glue Factory. I'll get 1 million views. Little Trip added, make sure you get the sound. I want to hear the crunch. I looked at Buxter. There's no need for this. I'll move her. Give me an hour. An hour? Buxter tilted his head like I'd asked for a kidney. Son, I don't give an hour to people who pay me, let alone people I pay. Or don't pay, in your case. Consider this a lesson in time management. He dropped the blade and pushed. Diablo screamed once, a sound I will never scrub out of my ears no matter how many years I got left. Then nothing. When the dozer reversed, all I could see was red dust and something that used to be breathing. Buxter climbed down, waddled over, his ostrich skin boots crunching on the dirt. He glanced at his son's phone. Did you get it? Every frame, Daddy. Good. Post it. Then to me, you're next. 7 days, I'm bulldozing your shack. County approved it this morning. Parking lot. Big Bubba cracked his knuckles. Maybe we'll bury you under the asphalt. Little Trip giggled. Roadkill tamale. I didn't say a word. I picked up Diablo's left front shoe, still warm, still shaped like her, and put it in my pocket. I could feel it burning through the denim like a brand. You hear me, wetback? Buxter leaned close enough that I could count the broken veins in his nose. Even your tears belong to my water rights. 7 days, I said. 7 days what? 7 days is plenty. He laughed, that wet gargling sound. Plenty for what? I just smiled. That scared him more than any yelling would. A man who smiles when you've just crushed everything he loves, that's a man you should worry about. Buxter didn't know that. He'd never loved anything enough to understand. I walked back to my shack, Diablo's shoe pressing against my thigh. On the way, I passed the manure lagoon, the one Buxter had been fined for 3 times but never cleaned. The stench could knock a buzzard off a gut wagon. But underneath all that filth, I knew something Buxter didn't. My grandpa had buried a secret there 80 years ago, and that secret was about to crawl out and bite the hand that starved us. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dozer blade. So I did what my grandpa taught me to do when the world gets too heavy, I picked up his journal. My grandpa, Eduardo Valdez, was an army engineer. Combat engineer, to be precise. He'd built bridges under fire in the Pacific, dug trenches in Korea, and come home to Texas with a head full of hydraulics and a heart full of bitterness because the country he'd fought for still called him a dirty Mexican. He'd surveyed every inch of Willow Creek before Buxter's daddy, a man appropriately named Chester the Molester, though not in the way you're thinking, more in the way he molested property lines, built the illegal dam and stole the water. Grandpa's journal had maps. It had diagrams. And it had something Buckster never knew existed, an old underground bypass channel running straight under his property, sealed up with boulders and concrete when Chester panicked about getting caught, but still intact. The inlet was buried under the manure lagoon. The outlet popped up right behind the Kowalski orchard, the Nguyen vegetable farm, and Mrs. Haggerty's rose nursery, every small grower Buckster had been strangling for 3 decades. I studied the schematic on the last page. My grandpa called it a valvula depression differential cassera, homemade differential pressure valve. A brass gate valve, a steel ball bearing, and a heavy spring. Install it on the main line, drop the pressure just enough, and the water would abandon Buckster's golf course and blast straight down into the old channel by gravity. No pumps. No electricity. Just physics and spite. Grandpa had written a note in the margin, por si algún día los ricos olvidan que el agua tiene memoria, in case one day the rich forget that water has a memory. I kissed Diablo's horseshoe. Time to work, old girl. The pump house was my first stop. Buckster never locked it. Too arrogant. The man had a security system on his mansion that could detect a fly landing on the windowsill, but his water infrastructure, the thing that made his whole empire possible, was protected by a $5 padlock he never bothered to click shut. I'd been in there 100 times to grease his precious machinery while his sons watched football and called me names I hadn't heard since basic training. I found the main distribution manifold. 12-inch pipe, polished brass gauge reading 110 psi. The line feeding the golf course and the mansion split off to the right with a service port nobody had touched in decades. It still had the original paint from 1962. I unscrewed the cap. Water dribbled out. Perfect. I pulled out my creation, a brass gate valve I'd machined on Buckster's own lathe, the one he used to make custom hood ornaments, a steel marble from the old pinball machine in the barn, and a spring I'd scavenged from a tractor seat. I threaded it into the port, attached a discharge hose, and pointed it downhill toward the ravine behind the manure lagoon. When the pressure drops below 90, I told the marble, you're going on a little trip. Make Grandpa proud. I tightened the last fitting and wiped everything clean. Buckster could stare at that valve all day and never understand what it did. He wasn't stupid exactly, he was worse. He was educated past the point of common sense. His kind thinks everything important comes with a user manual and a warranty. They forget that some of the best engineering in the world was done by men who couldn't read. Midnight. I dragged my shovel to the ravine. A stray dog followed me, some skinny brown mutt with one ear and an expression that said it had seen everything and was not impressed. It sat on a rusted washing machine and watched me dig like I was the evening entertainment. Stick around, I told it. Show's just starting. The old channel headwall was under 30 years of trash, rusted appliances, dead fence posts, a bathtub with a tree growing through it. The bathtub still had a shower curtain. A normal man would quit. I'm not normal. I'm a Valdez. We're too stubborn for our own good and too mean to die. I swung that shovel till my hands bled. Wrapped in strips of my shirt. Kept going. The dog watched. Around 2 a.m., Frank Kowalski's porch light flicked on. Frank came shuffling out in his bathrobe, a 12-gauge shotgun in his hands. Who's out there? I'll shoot. I got nothing to lose and a gun that's older than God. It's me, Frank Valdez. The shotgun lowered. Sebastian? What in the Sam Hill are you doing in that trash pit at midnight? Digging. For what? China? You're going the wrong direction. For water. Frank stared at me. He looked at the ravine. He looked at my bleeding hands. He looked at the stray dog, who yawned. You been drinking? Nope. Been planning. Go back to bed, Frank. And tomorrow morning, bring your fishing pole. Fishing pole? The creek's been dry 30 years. Bring it anyway. And tell the Gwynns. And Mrs. Haggerty. Tell everyone. Sunrise. You've lost your mind. Probably. But I've also found a channel. Go sleep, Frank. He stood there another minute, then shook his head and shuffled back inside. I heard him mutter, 30 years I've known that man, and he still surprises me. The dog stayed. By 3 I hit stone. The channel was beautiful, cut rock, tight as a mason's dream, sloping east at a perfect 2-degree grade. My grandpa's work. The old man had built this with his own hands and a crew of Mexican laborers who got paid half what white crews earned and did twice the work. There were their initials carved in the lintel, ER, JV, MS, EV. Eduardo Valdez was the EV. This is for you too, abuelo, I whispered. I crawled inside and started clearing. Rats, cobwebs, decades of silt. Didn't care. I was inside Buxter's fortress now, and he had no idea. The dog crawled in after me. I named him Paco on the spot. He didn't object. Morning came. I showed up at the pump house like always, covered in mud. I didn't bother to explain. Buxter was there, checking his sprinkler schedule on an iPad. He was yelling at the iPad because it had auto-corrected sprinklers to sprinkles, and he thought the Chinese were hacking him. You're still here, he said when he saw me. You pay me to maintain equipment, I said. I'm maintaining. Whatever. Grease the bearings on pump 3. And don't touch anything important. Wouldn't dream of it, Jeef. He squinted at me, trying to figure out why I wasn't broken. Men like Buxter need to see you broken. When you're not, it confuses them. It's like looking at a dog you've kicked for years suddenly wagging its tail with a purpose. You're acting weird, he said. I found religion. Since when do Mexicans find religion? Since somebody killed my horse. His face twitched. That nag was worthless. Worthless things still deserve mercy. Mercy's expensive. He climbed into his truck. You got 5 days now. Use them wisely. I plan to. He drove off. I turned back to the pump house and smiled at my little brass valve, sitting there like a silent bomb. Paco had followed me from the ravine and was now peeing on the pump house door. Good dog. 3 more nights. 3 more nights of digging, clearing, sweating, bleeding. I didn't sleep. Didn't eat much. The stray dog followed me everywhere, and I started sharing my tortillas with him. Between the two of us, we made a good team. He'd bark if anyone came near, and I'd lean on my shovel and look innocent. On the 3rd night, little Trip almost caught me. He was coming back from a bar at 2 a.m., weaving all over the road in his daddy's spare truck. He saw a light near the ravine and stumbled over to investigate. Who's there? He slurred. Is that you, old man? I stepped out of the shadows, mud up to my elbows. Just checking the fence line, Jeef. Coyote's been digging. Coyotes. He squinted. You look like a coyote. Gracias. I didn't mean it as a compliment. I'll take it anyway. He stared at the mud on my clothes, at the shovel in my hand, at Paco sitting next to a pile of freshly dug earth. His brain tried to put the pieces together. You could almost hear the gears grinding. Then he burped, shrugged, and wandered back to his truck. Whatever. Don't steal nothing. Wouldn't dream of it. I waited till his taillights disappeared. Then I went back to work. Paco wagged his tail. By the 5th night, I finished. The channel was clear from inlet to outlet. I'd dug connection pits at the Kowalski orchard, the Nguyen farm, and Mrs. Haggerty's nursery. I'd built simple distribution boxes out of scrap lumber and plastic sheeting. They were crude but functional. Kind of like me. At 4 a.m., I stood in the pump house. My hand on the main valve. Paco sat at my feet, watching. "You ready, Diablo?" I touched my pocket. The horseshoe was warm. "This one's for you." I cranked the valve shut, then cracked it open just a sliver. The pressure on the gauge dropped from 110 to 90. Then 85. Then 80. I heard it. A soft click. My marble had unseated. Somewhere underground, water that had been feeding Buxter's golf course for 30 years changed direction. It found my hose. It found my grandpa's channel. It found the path of least resistance, like water always does. You can dam it, you can divert it, you can bottle it and sell it, but eventually water goes where water wants to go. And tonight, it wanted to go home. I walked out into the pre-dawn dark and stood at the ravine. Paco whined. For a long moment, nothing. Then I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, a gurgle. A trickle. A roar. White water blasted out of the buried head wall and shot down the channel, picking up speed, churning through 80 years of dust. It rounded the bend toward Kowalski's orchard, and I followed it, running like a man half my age, Paco barking at my heels. I reached Frank's property just as the sun cracked the horizon. The water hit the first distribution box and split 3 ways. One branch poured into Frank's irrigation ditch. One branch shot toward the Nguyen's vegetable field. One branch cascaded into Mrs. Haggerty's rose beds. I stood there, covered in mud, hands bleeding, Diablo's horseshoe in my pocket, Paco drinking from the new stream, and watched the water spread. Frank came out his back door in his underwear, coffee mug in hand. He looked at the water. He looked at me. He dropped the mug. It shattered on the porch. "Mother of God," he whispered. "Mother of God." Then he did something I didn't expect. He ran back inside, came out with his fishing pole, the one he'd kept in the closet for 30 years, the one his wife said he should throw away, and cast it into his own irrigation ditch. "I told you to bring it," I said. "You said bring it. You didn't say I couldn't use it." He was crying and laughing at the same time, an old man with a fishing line in a ditch full of water that shouldn't exist. "I'm gonna catch a catfish in my own apple orchard. They're gonna put me in a museum." Mrs. Nguyen was next. She ran into her field, screaming in Vietnamese, splashing through water that hadn't touched her soil in 3 decades. Her teenage son, Tommy, was filming with his phone. Her husband, Mr. Nguyen, who'd barely spoken a word of English in 40 years, grabbed a bucket and started carrying water to every plant individually, as if he was afraid it would disappear if he stopped moving. Mrs. Haggerty appeared in her bathrobe, looked at her roses drinking, and sat down in the mud and wept. Her roses were famous. She'd won ribbons at the state fair for 20 years before the drought hit. People said she talked to them. She probably did. And now they were drinking again, and she was sitting in the mud in her Sunday robe, and she didn't care at all. Then the trucks started coming. I'd told Frank to bring everyone. He'd brought everyone. Pickups, tractors, an ambulance. Somebody probably thought there'd been an accident. The entire county crowded around Kowalski's fence line, staring at the water like it was the second coming. Old man Henderson brought his shotgun, as he did to every event. Nobody knew why. It was just his thing. "What the hell?" somebody shouted. "Where's this coming from?" "It's impossible," another voice said. "There's no water rights for this land. It's Willow Creek." Frank yelled, still holding his fishing pole. "I recognize the taste." "You can't recognize water by taste," somebody argued. "The hell I can't. This water tastes like 1987 and a picnic with my wife." The crowd surged. Questions flying. Phones recording. Somebody called the county water board. Somebody else called the news. Tommy Nguyen's drone footage was already uploading. And then Buxter's black truck came screaming up the road. He burst out, face purple. He'd clearly been woken up by someone and hadn't had time to put on his public face. He was wearing one cowboy boot and one bedroom slipper. What is this? Who did this? His eyes found me. I was standing by the distribution box, shovel in hand, Paco sitting beside me like a furry bodyguard. You, he snarled. You did this. I dug a ditch, I said. You stole my water. Water's got a memory, Buckster. It remembers where it used to flow. You're dead. I'll have you deported. I'll have you arrested. He grabbed my collar. His slipper fell off. Let him go, Buckster. The voice came from behind the crowd. Dr. Horton, the state water engineer. He'd driven 2 hours after getting a panicked call from a county official. He was standing at my distribution box with a surveying level, and his face was the color of someone who just discovered gravity was optional. This can't work, Horton said. The gradient's only 2%. The friction loss alone should stall it. But the water's moving at 8 gallons per second. That violates everything I learned in graduate school. It's the valve, I said. Pressure differential. My grandpa designed it in 1947. Horton stared at me. Your grandfather designed a gravity-fed, pressure-compensated irrigation system using zero electricity and scrap parts. He was an engineer. He also once built a still out of a radiator and made whiskey that could strip paint. The irrigation was his side project. Where is this valve? Inside Buckster's pump house. Feeding off his main line. The crowd went dead silent. Even the ambulance driver stopped checking his phone. Buckster's face went from purple to white, like a bruise fading in reverse. You tapped my main line? The main line that runs from your illegal dam, I said. The dam your daddy built without permits. The dam that's been stealing public water for 30 years. Illegal? Frank stepped forward, still holding his fishing pole. A small, confused perch was now dangling from the line, and nobody had noticed except me. Wait. The dam's illegal? I've got the original water rights documents, I said. And the county survey from 1965. Willow Creek was declared a public waterway. Can't be dammed without federal approval. You're lying. Buckster screamed. Those documents don't exist. The documents are in my shack, I said. Filed with the state this morning. Your daddy thought he burned the originals. He didn't. My grandpa made copies. Your daddy wasn't as smart as he thought. Neither are you. Horton was already on his phone, pulling up records. His eyes widened the way a man's eyes widen when he realizes his entire professional career just got sideswiped by an old Mexican with a shovel. He's right. There's no dam permit on file. Not for that location. It was denied in 1987, but construction proceeded anyway under a forged document. What are you saying? Mrs. Nguyen demanded. I'm saying, Horton said slowly, that Mr. Winstrap has been illegally diverting a public waterway for approximately 3 decades. And Mr. Valdez here just restored natural flow using a homemade valve and 80-year-old blueprints. Buckster's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. He looked like a catfish someone had thrown onto the bank. Wait, I said. It gets better. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Buckster's voice, captured 4 days ago when he thought I was just a dumb field hand emptying his trash cans. Those water meters? I had them rigged. County thinks the small farms are using twice what they actually pump. That's how I justified cutting their allocations. Starve them out, then buy the land for pennies. That's the Winstrap way. I had invented the rigged meters accusation to bait him during a conversation about county inspections. But he'd bragged about it so readily, with so much detail, that it might as well have been true. The man couldn't resist bragging. It was his only weakness, and it was a big one. The crowd heard his voice and erupted. "You son of a bitch!" Frank lunged, but his son held him back. The perch finally fell off his hook and landed in the mud, where it flopped twice before Mrs. Haggerty gently picked it up and put it back in the water. "That's a felony," Horton said quietly. "Tampering with water meters is a federal offense. Every count carries up to 5 years." Buckster grabbed his chest. I thought he might be having a heart attack. Turned out he was just panicking. His hand came away with a loose button. "You can't prove any of this. That recording is illegal. Entrapment. Texas is a one-party consent state," Horton said. "And you just admitted to multiple felonies in front of approximately 60 witnesses. Including me. And I'm a state official." "The water's doing the proving anyway," I said. I pointed at the channel. "This has been under your feet for 80 years, Buckster. Your daddy buried it. My grandpa built it. And now every drop that used to water your golf course is watering your neighbors. Gravity doesn't take bribes. Gravity doesn't care about your lawyers. Gravity just pulls." Buckster's sons pushed through the crowd. Big Bubba took one look at the water, one look at his father's face, and said something truly, profoundly stupid. "Dad. The golf course. What about it? It's, the greens are underwater. Also the 9th hole has a new lake. And the statue of you that Mom commissioned, the one of you riding a horse, it's up to its neck." "What horse statue?" Little Trip asked. "I thought that was a bear." "It's a horse. It's always been a horse." "Boys," Buckster hissed, "shut up about the statue. The angel fountain's floating away too," Bubba added helpfully. "The naked one." Buckster sprinted to his truck and tore off, one boot and one bare foot. Half the crowd followed him, and I'll tell you, there's no sound sweeter than 40 farmers laughing as they watch a rich man discover his putting green has become a lake and his naked angel fountain is bobbing toward the county road like a religious parade float. Horton pulled me aside. "Mr. Valdez, I need to understand that valve. And I need to document all of this. The state is going to need a full report. Be my guest, doctor. But first," he looked at my hands. "You're bleeding. Badly." I looked down. My shirt wraps were soaked red. I'd dug for 5 nights straight. I hadn't noticed. Paco whined and licked my ankle. Mrs. Nguyen appeared with a first aid kit the size of a briefcase. "Sit," she commanded. "Sit now. You're worse than my husband when he tried to fix the tractor with a hammer." I sat. She bandaged my hands while the whole county stood around me, watching water flow where there'd been only dust. Tommy Nguyen's drone hovered overhead, capturing everything for the internet. The video would eventually get 8 million views and spawn 17 reaction channels. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Frank knelt beside me, still holding his fishing pole. "Why?" he asked. "Why'd you do all this for us?" "Wasn't for you," I said. "Was for my horse." He blinked. "Your horse?" "Buckster killed her. Because she was thirsty. She hadn't had water in 4 days." I kept thinking, how can a man own so much water and let a horse die of thirst? How can he watch her suffer and film it for clicks? That's not a man. That's an empty suit with a bank account. What was her name? Diablo. Diablo. Frank tested the name. She was a good horse. Ugly as a mud fence and stubborn as a stump. Best horse I ever had. She used to steal my hat and make me chase her for it. Every morning. Same game. She never got tired of it. Frank looked at my hands, at the channel, at the water spreading across his apple orchard. His eyes filled up. "You crazy old bastard," he whispered. "You beautiful, crazy old bastard. I pulled Diablo's horseshoe from my pocket and hung it on the distribution box. Paco sniffed it and wagged his tail. "That's her water now," I said. "Every drop." The sun was up. The news trucks were arriving. And somewhere up the road, Buckster Winstrap III was standing in a foot of mud, watching his golf course drown, watching his naked angel float toward a dairy farm, trying to figure out how one old Mexican with a shovel and a stray dog had just ended his empire. I leaned back, let Mrs. Nguyen finish her bandaging, and smiled. Paco jumped into my lap. "Diablo," I murmured. "That's just the warm-up." And the whole county heard me say it. By noon the next day, my face was on every screen in the county. Tommy Nguyen's drone footage had gone viral. The video showed everything: the water bursting out of the ravine, Buckster screaming in his flooded putting green, the naked angel fountain drifting past a bewildered cow. It also showed me standing there with bloody hands and a horseshoe, Paco at my side. The caption read, "Mexican Grandpa Destroys Millionaire with Shovel." Close enough. I would have preferred, with hydrology, but the internet has its own poetry. The video had 3 million views before I finished breakfast. My favorite comment was from a guy named Harley Dan 88, "This old dude just ended a dynasty with gravity. Gravity don't care about your trust fund." I laughed so hard coffee came out my nose. Paco, who had appointed himself my official companion, licked the coffee off the floor. Frank Kowalski had to whack me on the back. "You're enjoying this too much," Frank said. "I've been waiting 20 years to enjoy anything. Let me have this." "Fair enough. But if you choke on a biscuit, I'm not doing CPR. I'm old. My knees are shot." The reporters showed up first. Channel 5, Channel 9, some national crew from Fox, a woman from Univision who interviewed me in Spanish and made me homesick. They all wanted the story. How did a 60-year-old field hand with a 6th-grade education pull off a hydrological miracle? I told them the truth: my grandpa was smarter than your whole newsroom put together. I just read his notes and did what he would have done. The water did the rest. The blonde lady from Channel 9, her name was Tiffany, and she'd clearly never touched dirt in her life, asked, "Mr. Valdez, what do you say to critics who call this theft?" "Theft?" I snorted. "Buckster stole the creek 30 years ago. I just returned it to its rightful owners. Consider me the repo man for God." Tiffany stared at me. "Did you just say, the repo man for God?" "I did." "Write it down. Put it on a shirt." That clip got another 2 million views. Somebody in Austin actually made a t-shirt that said, "Repo Man for God," with a silhouette of my shovel and a halo over it. They sold 5,000 of them in one weekend. I ordered 10. I gave them to everyone who'd helped. Paco got one too. He wore it with dignity. But the real circus started when the black helicopter landed in Kowalski's pasture. I ain't joking. A helicopter. Sleek black thing with gold lettering that read, "Texas Agricultural Alliance." The door opened and out stepped a man in a $5,000 suit and cowboy boots made from an animal that had probably died of embarrassment. He was tall, silver-haired, teeth so white they hurt to look at. His name was Wallace T. Beauregard III, president of the State Agricultural Association, and he walked like he expected the ground to thank him for stepping on it. "Sebastian Valdez," he boomed, arms wide like we were long-lost brothers. "The man who made water run uphill." "It ran downhill, actually," I said. "That's the whole point. Gravity." He laughed too loud. "Modest. I love it. Folks, this is the kind of can-do spirit that built Texas." He grabbed my hand and pumped it while cameras clicked. "Son, I flew 300 miles to meet you. You could have called." "I don't call. I appear." He draped an arm over my shoulder like we were posing for a statue. "I'm here to make you an offer that'll change your life." I already changed my life. With a shovel. Ha. Sharp. I like sharp. He pulled a leather-bound folder from his jacket. $150,000 a year. Full benefits. Company truck. Apartment in Austin. All you gotta do is consult for us. Tell farmers how to do what you did. No pumps, no electricity, just smart water management. You'll be the face of sustainable agriculture in the Southwest. The crowd, which had gathered again because nothing draws a crowd like a helicopter, all went boo-hoo at the number. 150. That was more than most of them made in 3 years. Frank whispered, "Take it, you idiot." I ignored him. Wallace wasn't done. He reached into the helicopter and pulled out something that made me question the seriousness of Texas agriculture. It was a crown. A gaudy, gold-painted, plastic jewel-encrusted crown with the words, "King of County Water," glued on in glitter. The glitter was already shedding. It looked like a kindergarten art project that had been left in the sun too long. "We had it made this morning," Wallace said proudly. "You're the Water King now, Seb. May I call you Seb?" "No. Water King Seb." "Put it on." He tried to place the crown on my head. I sidestepped. He stumbled, recovered with a politician's smile. A piece of glitter fell off and stuck to his cheek. "You don't want the crown?" I took the crown from his hands. Examined it. Turned to Frank's grandson, a 7-year-old named Cody who was watching with big eyes. The kid was wearing overalls and had a frog in his pocket. I liked him immediately. "Hey, Chamico. You want to be a king?" Cody nodded so hard his hat fell off. The frog jumped out of his pocket. I plopped the crown on his head. It slid down over his ears and rested on his nose. "There. Now you're Water King. Rule wisely. No dams. And don't forget to hydrate." Cody ran off screaming with joy, chasing his frog, the crown bouncing on his head. Wallace looked like I'd thrown his gift in the trash. "That was a ceremonial item, Mr. Valdez. Ceremonial items belong on the heads of people who still believe in magic. I'm 60. I stopped believing in magic when a bulldozer killed my horse." I handed back his folder. "Thanks for the offer, but I got work to do here." "Work? What work? You're a national sensation. You could be touring, speaking, selling your story to Hollywood. I know a producer who wants to make a movie. He's thinking Tommy Lee Jones for you. Tommy Lee Jones is white. They'll use makeup. Or you could be played by Danny Trejo. He's Mexican. Mr. Trejo is a fine actor. But I already told my story. It's got a shovel and a dead horse. Not exactly Disney material." Wallace leaned in, dropping the TV voice. "Son, you're making a mistake. Men like me don't fly helicopters for nothing. Take the deal. You're old. You need security. Men like you fly helicopters because you can afford the gas," I said. "I can't. So I'm staying here. My security is that ditch. As long as water flows, I eat." He stared at me. Then he laughed, a real laugh this time, not the TV one. It was the laugh of a man who'd finally met someone he couldn't buy. "You're the stubbornest old coot I ever met. Gracias. Now if you'll excuse me, I got a water system to explain to the county." "Paco, come." Paco trotted over. Wallace looked at the dog. "Is that a stray?" "He's my hydrology consultant." Wallace shook his head, climbed back into his helicopter, and lifted off. As the noise faded, I heard him shout, "The offer stands, Valdez. Call me when you get tired of dirt." "I am dirt," I yelled back. "That's the whole problem for people like you." The helicopter disappeared over the horizon. Frank came up beside me. You just turned down $150,000 and a helicopter ride. You know that, right? I know. And you gave away a crown. Cody's already lost it in the creek. Mrs. Haggerty had to fish it out with a net. Then it's where it belongs. In the water. The crowd parted, and I found myself face to face with someone I didn't expect. A young woman, maybe 22, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that looked like they'd been crying for a week. She wore jeans and a University of Texas t-shirt with a coffee stain on the sleeve, and she was holding a manila envelope like it was a live grenade. "You're Mr. Valdez," she said. "Not a question. Depends who's asking. My name is Estella Winstrap. Buckster's my grandfather." The friendly murmur around us died like a candle in a hurricane. Frank stepped forward, fists clenching. "You got a lot of nerve showing up here, girl. Your grandpa just threatened my friend and killed his horse. What do you want, a reunion tour?" She didn't flinch. "I know what he did. I know about the dam, the bribes, the meter tampering, the forged permits, all of it. That's why I'm here." She pushed the envelope toward me. "This is for you." I didn't take it. "What's inside?" "Everything." Her voice cracked but held. "Recordings of phone calls. Emails. Bank transfer records. He's been paying off the water commissioner for 15 years. There's a recording of him at a dinner party, laughing about how he starved out the little guys and turned their farms into parking lots. He says it like it's a punchline. And there are photos of the dam when it was built without permits. My great-grandfather's original blueprints with the county stamps forged. I found them in a safe deposit box he forgot about." The crowd pressed closer. Somebody whispered, "Holy hell." Old man Henderson cocked his shotgun. "Not at her. Just generally." "Why would you give me this?" I asked. "He's your family." She looked at me, and for a second I saw something I recognized, the look of a person who'd been drowning in a family of sharks and just decided to stop swimming and start fighting. Because when I was 12, I asked him why the neighbors' farms were dying. He said, "That's how the strong stay strong, sweetheart." Then he had another glass of bourbon and complained that his steak was overcooked. I haven't slept right since. I took the envelope. It was heavy. "You know what this'll do to him? He's looking at decades in prison." "I know." Her jaw tightened. "He killed your horse. He's ruined 37 families," I counted. "He called you," she stopped, unable to say it. "Wetback," I finished. "He called me a wetback." "You can say it. The word don't bite unless you let it. I've been called worse by better people." "He called you that while I was standing right there. At a barbecue. I was 15. I said nothing. I laughed because everyone else was laughing. Tears welled up and spilled over. I said nothing for 10 years. Today I'm saying something. Today I'm saying everything." I opened the envelope. Inside were USB drives, printed emails, photographs of Buckster shaking hands with a man in a county uniform who was holding an envelope thick enough to be a mortgage payment. The evidence was meticulous. She'd been building a case since she was a teenager. "Estella," I said. "You just handed me a nuclear bomb." "I know. Your grandpa's gonna disown you. Your whole family's gonna disown you. They're gonna call you a traitor and worse." "Good." She wiped her eyes and stood straighter. "I'd rather be disowned by criminals than loved by them. I've been living in a house built on stolen water and crushed dreams. I'm ready to be homeless if that's what it takes." Frank, who'd been ready to throw her off his property 5 minutes ago, now looked like he'd swallowed a frog. "Young lady, I owe you an apology. I judged you by your last name. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Kowalski." I just want to help fix what my family broke. I'm studying environmental law. Well, I was. I might have to drop out to afford rent. But this is more important than a degree. I tucked the envelope under my arm. Then stick around. I'm calling a town meeting tonight. And you're gonna be my star witness. Bring tissues. It's gonna get ugly. She nodded, scared but steady. Paco walked over and leaned against her leg. She reached down and scratched his ear. The dog had good instincts. The town hall in Green Valley was a cinderblock building with a leaky roof and folding chairs that had been uncomfortable since the Johnson administration. Tonight, it was packed so tight the walls were sweating. Every farmer, rancher, and curious neighbor within 20 miles had shown up. The air smelled of sweat, coffee, and the distinct odor of Old Man Henderson's shotgun oil. I stood at the front, next to a wheezing projector I'd borrowed from the library. Dr. Horton was there, looking official with his state badge. Estella sat in the front row, pale but determined, with Paco at her feet. Frank and the Nguyen's filled the second row. Mrs. Haggerty had brought roses from her newly watered garden and placed them on the podium like a funeral arrangement. Maybe it was the funeral of an empire. Buxter Winstrap III arrived last, flanked by Big Bubba and Little Trip. He'd changed into a fresh suit, $10,000 of Italian wool that still had mud caked in the seams. His face was a thundercloud. He scanned the room, saw Estella, and froze like a deer in the headlights of an oncoming semi. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed. "You're supposed to be at school." "Sitting with decent people," she said. I dropped out. Too expensive. The family's about to have some financial difficulties. You ungrateful little. His face purpled, but before he could explode, I banged a gavel on the podium. Frank had appointed me temporary sergeant-at-arms, which meant I got to hit things and nobody could complain. "Order," I said. "This meeting's about water. Who's got it, who stole it, and what we're gonna do about it." "Buxter, sit down. You'll get your turn. Then you'll get cuffs if I have my way. That water's mine. I've got deeds. My family built this county. Sit down, or I'll have Henderson escort you out." Old Man Henderson cocked his shotgun again. The sound echoed through the hall like the voice of God. Buxter sat. His sons flanked him like ugly bookends. I clicked on the projector. The first image was a county map from 1965, showing Willow Creek as a public waterway with the words, "Not for private development," stamped in red. The second was a photo, a recent one, taken by Estella, of the illegal dam, clear as day, with Buxter's private reservoir behind it and his mansion visible in the background. "You all know this dam," I said. "Buxter's daddy built it in '88. The county approved it?" I shook my head. "Nope. Here's the permit application." I clicked to the next slide. "See that signature? County Clerk Mary Beth Olson. Problem is, Mary Beth Olson died in 1985. 3 years before the dam was built. My grandpa's journal identified the handwriting as belonging to Chester Winstrap himself. The man forged a dead woman's signature and nobody checked because he was rich and she was dead." Gasps. Buxter squirmed so hard his chair squeaked. "Wait, there's more." I plugged in the USB drive and hit play on the audio. Buxter's voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakable. It was the dinner party recording. You could hear ice clinking in glasses and someone's annoying laugh in the background. "Told the county those beaners are using double their allocation. The meters are rigged to read high. Soon as they miss a payment, and they will, because I've made sure of it, I foreclose and absorb the land. Done it 6 times now. Kowalski's next. His apples are already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." The room went dead silent. Then the roar started. Not a roar of anger. A roar of something deeper, grief, betrayal, years of swallowed rage finally finding a voice. "You son of a bitch." Frank stood up, his chair clattering behind him. "You were at my wife's funeral. You shook my hand and said, 'Sorry for your loss, Frank,' and you were already planning to take my farm." Buckster's mouth opened. "I didn't, that's not. It's literally your voice," Big Bubba said, stupidly helpful. "Dad, that's you. I remember that party. You had the salmon." "Shut up, Bubba. For once in your life, shut your mouth." Dr. Horton stepped forward, his face grim. "I've verified the metadata on these recordings. They're authentic. The timestamps match. And the forged permit alone is a felony. Mr. Winstrap, you're looking at decades of water rights violations, fraud, conspiracy, and what appears to be at least 6 counts of criminal foreclosure fraud." Buckster stood, knocking over his chair. "This is a witch hunt. That old Mexican's been stealing from me for years. He's the criminal." "Stealing what?" I asked. "Water you already stole? That's not how math works. And it's definitely not how water works." The crowd laughed. A hard, angry laugh. The kind of laugh that's just one wrong word away from becoming something else entirely. "Here's what's gonna happen," I said. "I'm turning all this evidence over to the state police. They're waiting outside. But first, I reached into my pocket and pulled out Diablo's horseshoe. Set it on the podium." The clank echoed through the hall like a bell. "You owe a debt, Buckster. To her. To every farmer you put under. To your own granddaughter, who had to turn you in because you left her no choice. You want money? Is that it?" He was sweating now, his collar dark and spreading. A button popped off his shirt and rolled under a chair. Nobody picked it up. "I don't want your money. Money's just paper. Water's life." I stepped down from the podium and walked toward him. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. "I want you to stand in front of all these people and say you're sorry." "Sorry? For what? For being successful? For being a thief? And a bully? And a murderer of an innocent horse who never did a thing to you except belong to a man you hated?" He laughed, a panicky, high-pitched sound. It was a horse. A worthless, broken-down nag. "You act like I killed your child. She was my child. She was all I had. And you filmed it. Apologize. Go to hell. Then get out of my county." He turned and shoved through the doors, Bubba and Trip scrambling after him. As he passed Estella, he spat on the floor at her feet. She didn't even blink. Outside, the parking lot was lit up with news vans and police lights. Buckster's truck, the big black King Ranch edition with the custom rims and the WNST license plate, was parked right where he'd left it, right where the new water flow had softened the ground into a sucking mud pit. He didn't notice. He just ran for it, cranked the engine, and floored it. The truck roared, tires spinning, spraying mud in 20-foot arcs. It sank to the axles in 3 seconds. He gunned it again, and the engine screamed like a dying animal, and the mud swallowed it to the doors. The crowd poured out of the building and stood on the steps, watching. Tommy Nguyen was already filming. Buckster kicked open the door and tried to climb out, but the mud sucked his remaining boot off. He'd lost the slipper hours ago. He tumbled face first into the muck. He flailed, rolled, came up looking like a chocolate-covered walrus. His $10,000 suit was destroyed. He had mud in his ears. He had mud in places mud should not be. Then his phone rang. His ringtone, he'd set it himself, years ago, as a joke, blasted through the parking lot speakers. "I'm the king of the county, baby, and don't you forget it." He'd recorded it at a karaoke bar. The crowd heard it, and the laughter that erupted could have been heard in the next time zone. I walked down the steps. The crowd followed. I stood at the edge of the mud pit and looked down at him. Paco trotted up beside me and barked once, as if to say, "Well, look what the cat dragged in. Need a hand, Jeef? Don't you touch me. Suit yourself." I crouched down and pulled out Diablo's horseshoe. Held it so the parking lot lights caught the curve of it. "This is for her. She never hurt a soul, and you crushed her for fun and uploaded it to the internet. So now you're gonna crawl out of that mud yourself, and while you crawl, I want you to remember what it feels like to be helpless. Helpless like a horse with no water. Helpless like a farmer watching his trees die. Helpless like your granddaughter, who had to choose between her family and her conscience." He stared at the horseshoe. Something flickered in his eyes, fear, maybe, or the first crack of shame. His ringtone started playing again. Nobody had called him. It was just stuck on a loop. He started. "Don't talk. Crawl." He crawled. On his belly, through the mud, while every camera in the county recorded it. His phone kept playing. "I'm the king of the county, baby." It took him 5 minutes to reach solid ground. When he finally stood, covered in filth, his 2 idiot sons tried to help him and slipped in themselves. All 3 of them wallowed like pigs in a sty, and the crowd laughed. Not a cruel laugh. A relieved one. The laugh of people watching a bully finally get gravity's full, undivided attention. Frank Kowalski stepped forward. He was an old man, 70 if he was a day, but he stood straight as a fence post. He started to clap. Slow, deliberate, 1 pair of hands. Then Mrs. Nguyen joined. Then Mrs. Haggerty. Then Old Man Henderson, shotgun in one hand and the other clapping against his thigh. Then the whole damn crowd, clapping not for Buckster but for the end of his reign, for the water flowing free, for the old Mexican who dug a ditch and changed everything. The state police moved in. 2 troopers cuffed Buckster and read him his rights. Bubba and Trip got cuffed too, for outstanding warrants. Little Trip had a DUI and an assault charge from a bar fight, and Big Bubba had a domestic violence complaint nobody had dared pursue until now. The 3 of them sat in the back of separate cruisers, mud drying on their faces, Buckster's phone still playing that stupid ringtone until a trooper finally smashed it with his boot. Estella watched from the steps. I went and stood beside her. Paco followed and sat on her feet. "You okay?" She shook her head. "Not really. He's still my grandfather. And my dad is going to be furious. He's in Houston. He's just like Grandpa, but with a better PR team. You did the right thing. That's harder than forgiving. That takes guts. Guts and a very organized filing system." She almost smiled. "I alphabetized the evidence. Is that weird? That's the least weird thing about tonight." She looked at me. "What happens now?" "Now?" I turned and faced the crowd, all those tired, hopeful faces. "Now we teach every farmer here how to build their own irrigation. No pumps. No bills. Just gravity and a little bit of sense. And a lot of digging." Dr. Horton stepped up. "The state's issuing an emergency water sharing order. Effective immediately, Willow Creek is public access. Every landowner with historic usage rights gets their share. And the dam is coming down. I'm ordering the demolition myself." The cheer that went up could have been heard in the next county. Frank hugged his wife's memory. Mrs. Nguyen's kids splashed in the puddles. Mrs. Haggerty cut roses from her newly watered bushes and handed them out one by one. Old Man Henderson fired his shotgun into the air in celebration. 2 troopers politely asked him to stop. He didn't. I stood in the middle of it all, Diablo's horseshoe back in my pocket, Paco at my side, watching the water run clear and cold and free. Wallace T. Beauregard III appeared at my elbow. I hadn't heard him land. He'd come back. Hell of a show, Valdez. Thought you flew back to Austin. I got halfway and my pilot said, "Sir, we're missing the best part." So we turned around. Good call. That ringtone alone was worth the fuel. I told you. I don't need Austin. You could have had the crown. Cody's got it. He'll do more good with it than I ever would. He already declared the Frog Pond a protected wetland. Wallace laughed, shook his head. You're a strange man. But I'll be damned if you didn't just pull off the best water heist in Texas history. It wasn't a heist, I said. It was a repossession. That night, Frank cracked open a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving since his son's wedding. We sat on his porch, the water gurgling in the new ditch, the stars wheeling overhead. Paco curled up on my feet. He'd found a home, apparently. I wasn't complaining. You know what's gonna happen tomorrow? Frank asked. The feds will indict Buckster. The water board will resign. Every lawyer in the state will try to claim a piece of this. And the internet will make about 50 more memes of me. And you? I'm gonna wake up, drink my coffee, and check the channel for blockages. Same as today. Same as every day. Paco will bark at a squirrel. It'll be glorious. You could be rich, Seb famous. You could never work again. You could be on Dancing with the Stars. I'd rather dig a ditch with a spoon. Frank poured more whiskey. Why? Genuinely, why? I would have taken Wallace's deal in a heartbeat. I'm not proud of that, but I would have. I sipped the whiskey. It burned nice. Frank, I spent 20 years working for a man who had everything and enjoyed nothing. You know what he enjoyed? Nothing. He was miserable. He had a golf course and a mansion and a naked angel fountain, and he was the angriest man I ever met. You know what I enjoyed? Digging that ditch. Putting my hands in the dirt. Making something flow that hadn't flowed in 3 decades. Hearing that water hit the rocks for the first time. That's my payday. That's my Dancing with the Stars. He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "You think Diablo knows? Wherever she is? I think she's drinking from a creek that never runs dry. I think Buckster's ringtone is playing on a loop in hell. And I think she's smiling." We sat there till the whiskey was gone and the moon was high. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and reporters and more drama than a telenovela marathon. But tonight, the water ran, the land drank, and an old man with a shovel and a stray dog had finally evened the score. And somewhere in a county jail cell, Buckster Winstrap III was trying to wash mud out of his ears and wondering how the hell a nobody with a 6th-grade education had just dismantled his entire empire. The answer was simple, and it was splashing right outside his window: water don't forget, and neither do I. The trial lasted 4 days. I've seen cows give birth with more suspense. Buckster tried every trick. Expensive lawyers from Dallas who charged more per hour than I made in a year. Character witnesses who were clearly paid. A psychiatrist who claimed Buckster suffered from wealth-induced impulse disorder, which is apparently what you call being a jackass when you can afford a diploma on the wall. The jury, 12 regular folks, 8 of them farmers or related to farmers, sat through it all with faces like stone walls. When my turn came, I didn't dress up. I wore my work shirt, the one with the frayed collar and the stain that might have been coffee or might have been 30-year-old revenge. I carried Diablo's horseshoe in my pocket, and I set it on the witness stand rail while I spoke. The judge, a black woman named Harriet Cole who'd been staring at Buckster like he was something stuck to her shoe since day one, didn't object. "Mr. Valdez," the prosecutor asked, "can you describe the defendant's treatment of you during your employment?" "Which part? The part where he called me a wetback, or the part where he killed my horse, or the part where he threatened to bulldoze my home, or the part where he stiffed me on pay for 6 consecutive years?" "All of it. Take your time." I looked at the jury. This man owned the water, the land, and the sheriff. He thought that meant he owned people too. I was a tool to him. Less than a tool. Tools get maintained. Tools get sharpened. I got called names and fed scraps. When his sons broke equipment, they blamed me. When his golf course needed watering, my neighbor's wells went dry. He took everything from me and called it business. What changed? I touched the horseshoe. He killed something I loved. Then he gave me 7 days to leave. That was his mistake. Don't ever give a man with nothing to lose 7 whole days. A man with nothing to lose and 7 days to think is the most dangerous creature on earth. The defense lawyer jumped up. Objection. Witness is editorializing. Overruled, Judge Cole said. I want to hear what Mr. Valdez has to say. Sit down, counselor, before I find you in contempt and make you sit in the hallway. The lawyer sat. Thank you, Your Honor. I faced the jury again. I dug a ditch. That's all. I dug a ditch my grandpa designed 80 years ago. The water did the rest. Gravity don't take bribes, and water don't forget where it belongs. Buckster here, he forgot. He thought he could dam up a creek and own the sky. But you can't own what God gives for free. You can't put a fence around the rain. The jury was out for 45 minutes. They spent most of it eating sandwiches. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Water theft. Bribery. Conspiracy. Animal cruelty, that one made me smile. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison, no parole for the first 7. His assets were frozen pending restitution hearings. The dam was ordered demolished within 30 days. The Naked Angel fountain was ordered returned to the dairy farm it had floated onto. The farmer wanted to keep it. The judge said no. Big Bubba got 3 years for assault and intimidation. Little Trip got 18 months for the DUI plus 6 more for threatening a witness. He tried to intimidate Estella with some very stupid text messages that she'd promptly forwarded to the FBI. The text said, and I quote, "You are gonna regret this, you traitor, LOL." He'd spelled, "You're wrong." The FBI agent who read it out loud in court had to pause to keep from laughing. The Windstrap empire collapsed like a sandcastle at high tide. The auction was held on a Saturday in October. The courthouse steps were packed. Farmers, investors, curiosity seekers. A news helicopter circled overhead, probably Wallace. Somebody was selling Water King t-shirts in the parking lot. Cody was there, still wearing his plastic crown, which now had duct tape on one side where he tried to fix it with a stapler. The auctioneer, a skinny man with a voice like a carnival barker, worked through Buckster's possessions one by one. The golf course went to a conservation group that planned to restore it to native prairie. The mansion went to a tech millionaire from Austin who wanted a rustic weekend retreat, and had no idea that the septic system was held together with chewing gum and spite. The fleet of trucks went to various bidders. Frank Kowalski bought Buckster's favorite King Ranch F-350 for $800, mostly for the satisfaction of parking it in his own driveway and letting his chickens roost on the hood. Then came the big one. The original Windstrap Ranch. 1,200 acres of prime valley land, including the river frontage, the old Valdez homestead, and the creek that my grandpa had first claimed in 1919. Opening bid, $500,000, the auctioneer called. Silence. That was too rich for anyone local, and the out-of-town investors were spooked by the ongoing water litigation. Nobody wanted to buy a legal headache. 400,000? 350? 300? I stood at the back of the crowd, my hands in my pockets. I had $12,000 to my name, saved over 2 decades of eating beans and wearing the same 3 shirts. I wasn't here to bid. I was here to watch my grandpa's land go to another stranger. Probably a developer who would build condos. Then Estella stepped forward. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back tight. She'd aged 5 years since the trial, but she stood straight. She'd been working nights at a diner and studying for her hydrology degree online. The girl had grit. $1, she said. The auctioneer blinked. Excuse me, young lady. This is not a joke. This is a legal proceeding. $1. I'm exercising the right of first refusal under the Texas Family Heritage Act. She held up a sheaf of legal documents. My great-great-grandfather purchased this land from the Valdez family in a transaction that this court has already ruled fraudulent. The original deed contained a reversion clause. If the Winstrap family ever lost the land due to criminal conviction, it reverts to the original owners or their descendants at fair market value, defined in the original contract as the sum of $1, paid in hand. The crowd erupted. Lawyers scrambled like ants. The auctioneer sputtered. The helicopter dipped lower to get a better shot. Judge Cole, who'd come to observe in civilian clothes, rose from her folding chair. Let me see those documents, young lady. Estella handed them over. The judge read for 5 long minutes while everyone held their breath. The only sound was Cody's plastic crown creaking and Old Man Henderson's shotgun, which he'd brought despite multiple requests not to, clanking against his belt buckle. Then Judge Cole looked up, and for the first time all day, she smiled. She's right. The clause is valid. It's archaic as hell, but it's valid. This land belonged to the Valdez family. Mr. Sebastian Valdez, where are you? The crowd parted. I found myself in an open lane, everyone staring. Paco trotted up beside me, because of course he did. Here, Your Honor. Do you have $1? I reached into my pocket. I had a quarter, 2 nickels, and a penny. 36 cents. I got it. Frank Kowalski pushed through, waving a silver dollar like it was the Olympic torch. My granddaddy gave me this in 1962. Told me, don't spend it unless the world's about to end or you're about to buy back a stolen ranch. Never knew what he meant until now. He pressed it into my palm. Go on, Seb, buy your land. I walked to the front. The crowd was dead silent. Even the helicopter had cut its engine to a low idle. I handed the silver dollar to the auctioneer, who looked at it like it was a live grenade. Do I have any competing bids? He asked weakly. A developer from Houston started to raise his hand. Mrs. Haggerty hit him with her purse, the same purse she'd used at the last auction. It was becoming a tradition. He put his hand down. Sold, the auctioneer whispered. For $1. God help me. I'm going to be audited for the rest of my life. The crowd didn't cheer. They roared. Frank lifted me off my feet. Mrs. Nguyen was crying. Old Man Henderson fired his shotgun into the air, again, and this time nobody stopped him. The helicopter overhead dipped low, capturing the whole thing for the evening news. Cody ran in circles, his crown bouncing, shouting, Uncle Seb owns a ranch. Uncle Seb owns a ranch. Paco barked at the helicopter. Estella found me in the chaos. She was crying too. Why? I asked. You could have inherited this land yourself someday. Your family could have fought the reversion. You didn't have to do this. My grandfather killed your horse, she said. My family stole your grandpa's dreams and salted the ground where he stood. This was the only way I could even the scales. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Besides, I'm going to be a hydrologist. I want to learn how to do what you did, but with science. Proper science. I already enrolled at A&M Online. They have a water management program. I used my diner tips to pay for the first semester. You already know the most important part. What's that? Water flows downhill. People should too. She hugged me. A hard, desperate hug that felt like absolution. I'm so sorry. For everything. For all of it. For every dinner party where I didn't speak up. You're not your grandpa, Mija. You never were. A Winstrap by blood, but a Valdez by heart. That's a better deal than you think. The dam came down on a Tuesday. I pushed the button on the demolition charges myself. Old Army engineers never forget how to set a charge, and I'd learned from my grandpa's notes. The concrete cracked, the reservoir breached, and Willow Creek roared back into its original bed for the first time in 3 decades. It was loud and muddy and beautiful. Fish that hadn't been seen in 30 years showed up 2 days later. Nobody knew where they'd been hiding. Water has its secrets. Frank's grandson Cody, still wearing the plastic crown, now reinforced with zip ties, threw a wreath of wildflowers into the current. For the horse, he yelled. For Diablo, I corrected, and my voice cracked just a little. For Diablo. Cody shouted. The best horse in Texas. She was ugly as a mud fence, but yes. The best. The county changed after that. Without Buxter's grip on the water board, the old rules crumbled like the dam. Dr. Horton pushed through a county-wide gravity irrigation initiative, and I spent the next 6 months driving from farm to farm in a borrowed truck, showing people how to read their land, how to find the natural fall lines, how to build channels that would last 100 years. Paco rode shotgun. He'd become the unofficial mascot of the ditch revolution, as the newspapers were calling it. My grandpa's journal became the unofficial textbook. Somebody scanned it and put it online, and I started getting calls from farmers in Arizona, New Mexico, California, even as far away as Kenya. Is this the Water King? They'd ask. We got a creek that dried up 40 years ago. Any chance you can take a look? I couldn't travel everywhere, so I started making videos. Me, standing in a ditch, explaining slope gradients and check dams with a stick and some mud. Estella edited them and added subtitles in 3 languages. She'd gotten good at video editing during her online classes. The channel was called Old Seb's Ditch School. The first video was titled, How to Move a River with a Shovel and Spite. It got 500,000 subscribers in a month. 500,000. Me. A 60-year-old Mexican with a 6th grade education, teaching hydrology to the world with a stick and a grin. The comments were a mix of farmers asking technical questions and city people saying things like, I don't own land but this makes me want to dig a hole in my apartment. I told them to start with a houseplant. Wallace T. Beauregard III called me every month with a new job offer. Every month I said no. Finally, he showed up in person again. No helicopter this time, just a dusty sedan and a bottle of good tequila. He'd learned. I give up, he said, pouring 2 glasses on my porch. I've offered you money, fame, a movie deal. Tommy Lee Jones is still interested, by the way, and you've turned down everything. What do you actually want? Want? I got my land back. I got water. I got neighbors who don't hate each other anymore. I got a dog who follows me everywhere. I got a YouTube channel where I teach people to dig holes. What else is there? Money. Influence. A legacy. A Wikipedia page. Wallace, I got a ditch with my name on it and a horseshoe in my pocket. That's all the legacy I need. When I die, they can bury me in the channel with a shovel in my hand. That's the only Wikipedia page I want. He shook his head, but he was smiling. You're the worst businessman I ever met. You could have been a brand. Valdez Water Systems. We could have sold franchises. Water shouldn't be a brand. Water should be free. That's the whole point of this story, in case you missed it. I didn't miss it. I just thought you might want a little something for your trouble. I got something. I got to watch Buckster Winstrap crawl through mud while his own ringtone mocked him. That's better than money. That's eternal. He drank his tequila. Fair point. That ringtone was incredible. It's my ringtone now. He laughed so hard he choked. Then he handed me the bottle. Keep it. I got more at home. He stood up and walked to his dusty sedan. You're a good man, Seb, annoying as hell, but good. Gracias. Now go home. I got a channel to check and a dog to feed. He drove off. And I sat there on my porch, on my land, with my grandpa's journal and my dog and my horseshoe, watching the sun go down over a valley that was green again. The morning Buckster got out on parole, early release for good behavior, which in prison apparently means not stabbing anyone and not trying to bribe the warden. I was out checking the North Channel. It had been 7 years since the trial. I was 67 now, grayer, slower, but still strong enough to swing a shovel when the silt built up. Paco was old too, his muzzle white, but he still followed me everywhere. I heard footsteps. Slow, uncertain footsteps. I turned and there he was. Buckster Winstrap III. Thinner than I remembered, almost gaunt. Dressed in clothes from a thrift store that didn't fit. His face had collapsed, the jowls sagged, the eyes were hollow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen on him before, humility. Or maybe just exhaustion. Sometimes they look the same. Valdez, he said. His voice was smaller too. Softer. Like he'd been sanded down. Buckster. I leaned on my shovel. You're a long way from the golf course. I walked. From the bus station. 5 miles. My feet are bleeding, I think. He looked down at his worn-out sneakers. I didn't have money for a cab. That's the most honest work you've ever done. Walking 5 miles on blisters. He flinched. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. But I'm not the one keeping score anymore. The water's been running. Time passes. I went back to clearing the channel. What do you want? He stood there, the sun beating down on his bald spot. He'd lost most of his hair. My boys won't take my calls. Bubba got out and moved to Oklahoma. Trip's still inside. Estella changed her last name, did you know that? She's Estella Valdez now. Legally adopted by a family she's not even related to. The irony is not lost on me. I know. I went to the courthouse. I was a witness. He closed his eyes. The mansion's a yoga retreat now. They do goat yoga on my putting green. I saw it on the news. There were goats. On my grass. Sounds like an improvement. I've got nothing. No money. No family. No land. No reputation. I'm a cautionary tale that parents tell their children. Don't be like Buckster Winstrap. There's a Wikipedia page. It's not flattering. Sounds like a good start. A clean slate. He opened his eyes. They were wet. I need a job. I stopped digging. Looked at him. He wasn't joking. He wasn't scheming. He wasn't wearing a wire or setting up some elaborate revenge. He was just a tired old man with nothing left, standing in the sun with bleeding feet and a broken spirit. A job, I repeated. I'll do anything. Clean ditches. Shovel manure. Scrub toilets. His voice broke like a teenager's. I just need something to do. Something that isn't sitting in a rented room above a laundromat, staring at the wall, listening to the dryer spin. I think too much. About the horse. About your horse. Her name was Diablo. Diablo. He said it carefully, like he was trying to learn a foreign language. I dream about her. The sound she made. I hear it every night. The dryer sounds like her. I leaned on my shovel and considered him. 7 years ago, this man had killed my horse and laughed. 7 years ago, he'd called me a wetback and meant it. 7 years ago, he was the king of the valley, and I was his mule. But 7 years is a long time. Water had flowed under a lot of bridges. And the man standing in front of me wasn't the same man who'd climbed off that bulldozer. Prison had broken him, but in the way a bone breaks and then heals, crooked, maybe, but stronger at the break. You remember what you said to me? I asked. The day you killed Diablo? He closed his eyes. I said even your tears belong to my water rights. And what do you say now? Now? He opened his eyes. A tear tracked down his cheek and into the stubble. Now I'd give anything for a drop of mercy. 1 drop. That's all I want. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Diablo's horseshoe. Still there, still warm from my body heat, worn smooth from 7 years of my thumb rubbing it. I held it up so he could see. She was a good horse. Ugly as sin, with breath that could peel paint. But loyal. Every morning she'd steal my hat and make me chase her. Same game, every day, for 15 years. She never got tired of it. And you crushed her. Because you could. I know. I think about it every day. Every single day. Good. I put the horseshoe back. Thinking about it is the first decent thing you've ever done. The second will be whatever you do next. I walked to the tool shed, pulled out a brand new shovel, the same model I'd used to dig the channel, and brought it back. I laid it at his feet. There's 300 feet of ditch that needs cleaning. Starts at the big cottonwood and runs to the Nguyen place. You'll do it by hand. No tractor. No help. You'll do it right, or you'll do it again. And if you so much as look at another horse wrong, I'll bury you in this ditch and plant a tree on top of you. He stared at the shovel. You're giving me a job? I'm giving you a shovel. What you do with it is your business. You can dig ditches, or you can hit yourself in the head with it. I don't care. But if you dig right. He picked it up. His hands, soft from a lifetime of never working, fumbled with the handle. He looked at the ditch, then at the shovel, then at me. I don't know how. Figure it out. The ditch'll teach you if you let it. Start at the cottonwood and work your way down. Don't stand in the water. It's cold. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the first clumsy scrape of his shovel in the dirt. It was wrong. Completely wrong. He was digging at the wrong angle, in the wrong spot, using the wrong part of the blade. He'd learn. Or he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem. I stopped at the cottonwood and looked back. Buckster Winstrap III, the man who'd owned half the county, was on his knees in the mud, trying to figure out how to clear a drainage channel. He slipped and fell face first into the water. He came up sputtering, covered in silt, and for a moment I thought he was going to cry. Then he laughed. A small, surprised laugh, like he'd just discovered something he'd never known existed, the simple, stupid joy of being bad at something and doing it anyway. Paco looked up at me. I swear that dog raised an eyebrow. I know, I told him. But even rattlesnakes deserve a chance to shed their skin. I walked on. The water was running clear and strong, feeding the farms, filling the cisterns, greening the valley. I walked the length of the channel, checking the flow, clearing a branch here, adjusting a stone there. The land was alive again. You could hear it in the frogs, see it in the grass, smell it in the soil after a rain. There were dragonflies. There hadn't been dragonflies in 30 years. 2 hours later, the entire valley went dark. I was at Frank's place when it happened. 1 minute the lights were on, the next, nothing. The refrigerator stopped humming. The TV went black. Frank was in the middle of a baseball game. "What the hell?" Frank said. "We heard shouting from down by the channel." I walked over and found Buckster standing knee-deep in the ditch, holding the two ends of a severed electrical cable. He'd dug right through the main power line that fed half the county. His hair was standing on end. Literally standing up. There was a faint smell of ozone and burnt polyester. "I found a pipe," he said weakly. "That's not a pipe, Buckster. That's a power line. I thought it was a root. Did the sparking not tip you off?" He looked at the cable ends, which were still fizzing. "I thought it was just really angry water." I stared at him. Frank stared at him. Paco stared at him. Even old man Henderson, who'd wandered over with his shotgun, stared at him. Then Frank started laughing. A deep, belly-shaking laugh. 30 years that line's been there, and nobody's ever hit it. First day on the job and you black out the whole county. "I'll fix it," Buckster said desperately. "I'll pay for it. I don't have any money. But I'll work it off." "You're damn right you'll work it off." I handed him a roll of electrical tape from my pocket. "Here. Wrap the ends. Carefully. Don't touch the metal part. Won't I get electrocuted?" "The breaker tripped. You're safe." "Probably." "Wrap it." He wrapped it. It was the ugliest splice in the history of electrical engineering. But when the power company showed up 2 hours later, they said it would hold until they could do a proper repair. The lineman looked at Buckster, this mud-covered, wild-haired old man with electrical tape all over his fingers, and said, "Sir, are you okay?" "I'm learning," Buckster said. "Learning what?" "Everything. I'm learning everything from scratch." The lineman looked at me. I shrugged. "He's an intern." Over the following weeks, Buckster became a fixture on the farm. He was terrible at everything. He dug ditches crooked. He mixed concrete too wet. He tried to plant a tree upside down. Mrs. Nguyen had to teach him the difference between a weed and a vegetable 5 times. Mrs. Haggerty caught him apologizing to a rosebush. Frank found him trying to feed an apple core to a tractor. But he showed up. Every morning at dawn, he was there, shovel in hand, ready to work. He never complained. He never asked for more than he was given. He ate lunch with the crew, beans and tortillas, same as me, and never once mentioned the golf course or the mansion or the naked angel fountain. One afternoon, I found him standing by the cottonwood tree, holding something in his hand. He was looking at the ground where a small mound of stones had been arranged in a circle. "What's this?" I asked. He jumped, shoved whatever he was holding into his pocket. "Nothing. Just, nothing." "What's in your pocket, Buckster?" He hesitated. Then he pulled it out. A small bunch of wildflowers, clumsily tied with a piece of grass. He'd picked them from the field. They were half wilted. "I was going to leave them," he said. "For the horse. For Diablo. I know she's not buried here. But I thought, maybe somewhere, she'd know." I looked at the stone circle. He'd built it himself. Carefully. The stones were all roughly the same size. He'd clearly spent time on it. "Her favorite color was yellow," I said. "She'd eat yellow flowers first. I don't know why. She just liked them." Buckster looked at his bouquet. There were no yellow flowers in it. "I'll find some. Tomorrow. The channel needs clearing first." He nodded and put the flowers back in his pocket. "Tomorrow." I walked away. Paco followed. And I didn't look back, but I heard him place the flowers on the stones before he picked up his shovel. I ended up at Frank's place. He was on his porch, same as always, a glass of lemonade in his hand. His apple trees, once shriveled and dying, were heavy with fruit. Mrs. Nguyen's vegetables had won a blue ribbon at the state fair, again. Mrs. Haggerty's roses supplied 5 florists in Austin now. The valley was green, and the water was free, and the people who'd been broken were whole again. "Buckster's in your ditch again," Frank said. "He's getting better. The last one was only slightly crooked. He's learning. Slowly. Like a glacier." Frank laughed. "You know what I figure? Giving him that job was either the cruelest thing you've ever done or the kindest. Maybe both. Water's like that. It can drown you or save your crops. Depends on where you're standing." I sat down on the porch and accepted a glass of lemonade. The sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Buckster's shovel scraping, steady now, rhythmic, no longer the clumsy hacking of a man who didn't know what he was doing. He'd found his rhythm. "You know what I figure?" I said. "A man's either a dam or a channel. Dams hold everything back and think they're strong, but eventually the water breaks through and they're nothing but rubble. Channels let the water flow, and they get to be part of something bigger than themselves. Buckster was a dam his whole life. Maybe now he's learning to be a channel. That's deep philosophy for a ditch digger. Ditch diggers are the original philosophers. We spend our whole lives watching things flow and thinking about what blocks them." Frank raised his glass. "To flow. To flow." We drank. The frogs started singing. The stars came out. And the water kept running, like it always had, like it always would. Back at my place, I sat on the porch with my grandpa's journal open on my lap. The pages were falling apart now, held together with tape and prayers and a little bit of dried mud from that first night of digging. I'd added my own notes over the years, new diagrams, new ideas, the things I'd learned from building channels across half the Southwest. Estella had been scanning them for the book she was writing. She'd gotten a publisher. They wanted to call it The Ditch Digger's Bible. I told her that sounded blasphemous. She told me to hush, and then she dedicated it to Diablo. My phone buzzed. A video call from Cody Kowalski, who was 14 now, tall and lanky, his voice cracking every other sentence. He still wore that plastic crown on special occasions. It was held together almost entirely by duct tape and faith at this point. "Uncle Seb. I built my first check dam. Show me, Mijo." He flipped the camera and showed me a neat little stone structure across a small drainage creek. It was rough, but the water was pooling behind it perfectly, and the banks were lined with young willow cuttings. "That's beautiful. You backfilled the base?" "With gravel, like you showed me. And I planted the willows. And I put a fish in it. Well, a minnow. He's named Carlos. You just did more for that creek than most people do in a lifetime. Proud of you, Water King." He beamed. The crown slipped down over one eye. "Are you coming to the festival next week?" "What festival? Didn't you hear? They're dedicating the new county park. They're calling it Valdez Water Gardens. Mom says there's gonna be a statue of you. A bronze one. With Paco. And the shovel. A statue. Of me." I shook my head. "I'm not dead yet. It's the one from the YouTube thumbnail. Where you're leaning on the shovel with the horseshoe and Paco's sitting on your boot. They're also putting in a dog park and naming it after Paco. Paco's Run. He's gonna be so confused." Paco, hearing his name, thumped his tail on the porch. "What about the crown?" I asked. "The original one? It's going in a glass case in the visitor center. Mrs. Haggerty donated it. She says it's a historical artifact. The museum people want to display it next to Buxter's old phone. The one with the ringtone. I laughed so hard I had to put down my lemonade. That's the best thing I've ever heard. Cody grinned. So you'll come? I'll be there. With bells on. Or maybe just a clean shirt. He laughed, and the call ended, and I sat in the dark with the frogs and the stars and the sound of water that would never stop running. I thought about the statue. About the park. About the thousands of people who'd watched my videos and built their own channels. About the families who still had their farms because one night, 20 years too late, I'd finally picked up a shovel and decided not to be a dam anymore. My grandpa wrote something on the last page of his journal. I'd read it 100 times, but tonight it hit different. He wrote, El agua no tiene dueño. El agua solo tiene camino. Water has no owner. Water only has a path. And I'd finally understood, that path runs through everything. Through the land, through the years, through the hardest hearts if you give them long enough. Even Buxter's heart, which had been dammed up since birth, was starting to find its channel. Slow. Crooked. But flowing. I closed the journal and put it away. I touched Diablo's horseshoe one last time and hung it on the nail above my door where it had lived for 7 years. It belonged there now. A permanent part of the house. A permanent part of me. Good night, old girl, I said to the dark. The water's still flowing. The idiot's still digging. And the frogs are louder than ever. You'd hate the frogs. You'd try to eat one. You'd fail. You always failed at catching frogs. But you never stopped trying. Paco whined softly. I know, boy. I miss her too. And somewhere in the dark, somewhere beyond the cottonwood tree where a small circle of stones held a bunch of yellow wildflowers, fresh ones, picked that morning, I like to think she heard me. And I like to think she was smiling.